April 2016, the war in Toronto would reach a dark new low, and Pressa would end up catching a serious case, getting charges that would haunt him for around a year and a half, just as he was beginning to make waves in the music industry. But this wasn't just a regular shooting or beating that you would expect a drill rapper to get caught up in, because the details of this crime were so incredibly shocking and serious that it's by far one of the most twisted things I have ever covered on this channel. The streets of Toronto reached a new low in April 2016, when allegedly members of Toronto's young buck killers were throwing a party at a rented apartment. At some point, members of a rival Queens Drive Crip gang tried to crash the event, leading to an armed standoff in a hallway where around 8 to 10 shots were fired. Apparently, shots rang out after members of YBK rode up to the apartment in an elevator, getting out of the 25th floor to confront the Crips that had crashed their party, and immediately opening fire when the elevator doors opened in a scene that was caught on CCTV and looked like something straight out of an old western. Now, in this clip, we see a gunfight in the hallway, followed by an alleged YBK member getting shot at. You can barely make it out in the footage, but essentially a bullet grazes his head, narrowly missing, and after dodging the bullet, he drops to the floor, sliding over to take cover behind the closing elevator door. That bullet in the elevator looked a hair away from being fatal, and as a result, the YBK members that had been shot at would come back with a serious response. Allegedly, the YBK members reconvened at a house in Swansea Mews, where they decided that they would target the two people who had supposedly told the Crips that their party was going on. With it being said that the next day the YBK members summoned two 17-year-old Crips to a property. Now, I'm not sure what they thought they were going there for, but when they arrived, they were then held captive for around 48 hours, over which time they were subjected to cruel and unusual torture, the likes of which I have never encountered in any kind of drill or gang story in the developed world. According to the police, the two 17-year-old youths were tied to a chair and beaten. During their beating, they were forced to play Russian roulette with a loaded handgun, and a shot was fired in the premises. And whatever was going on at that property was so bad that the police received multiple reports of suspicious activity and even visited the property. As a result of this added attention, the victims were then kidnapped and moved to multiple locations around the city to escape the cops as the abuse continued. And at this point, apparently things escalated even further, with it being reported that the two kidnappees were forced to do things of a sexual nature with each other. And that's not all. Apparently, these acts were filmed, and then the kidnappers got in touch with the victim's family, negotiating a ransom for their release. And the details for this ransom were apparently $3,000 for the release of the two kidnappees, and a final payment of $7,000 within a week, or the videos would be released. I have never heard anything so messed up in my life in one of these stories. So apparently the ransom demands were met, and the victims were released, eventually winding up in hospital, at which point apparently one of the victims made a statement to the police, which was then immediately withdrawn, but apparently there was enough forensic evidence for the police to go ahead and build up a case against the kidnappers without even having cooperating victims. And the police would go on to formally identify a number of potential kidnappers, even going as far as to identify the mother, sister, and grandmother of one of the suspects as people of interest too, because it was alleged that one of the places that the victims was brought to was a family home where everybody was in while this was going on. So, a few days after this ordeal all plays out, on April the 23rd, North Jane rapper Pressa, real name Quentin Gardner, is arrested on charges of kidnapping for ransom, unauthorized possession of a firearm, and assault with a weapon. And when he got to jail, Pressa would quickly end up getting into a fight with some rivals there too. However, there would be some hope waiting for young Pressa on the other side of the wall, because while he was described as a primary instigator of the violence, Pressa's lawyer maintained that he had only played a minor part in the incident, and Pressa wasn't identified as the ringleader of the attack, as apparently the most severe punishment in this incident was doled out by a 17-year-old named Ty Shay Pistol Gordon and a 23-year-old named Lincoln Anthony Richards, with cops saying that they were both last seen in the Lawrence Heights jungle hood. Now, miraculously, in spite of these serious charges, Pressa was able to make bail, during which time he would be free for a whopping 18 months. And thankfully, Pressa truly used this time wisely, focusing intensely on his music career rather than the streets, finally giving himself an opportunity to escape the violence that had plagued him and his family for years. Pressa's 2016 track Demihana was still picking up steam when he caught his case. Now, that track was actually inspired by Chicago drill songs all about smoking your dead ops, and naturally, it was picking up a bit of steam over in the United States. Pressa also dropped the song To Be Honest in February 2016, and when he got out on bail for those kidnapping charges, he just kept on dropping. Tracks like 100 Wassy Bars, John Connor, and Lavish, with these tracks leading up to his 2017 mixtape Press Machine. Then his January 2017 hit Novocaine along with Murder Beats was a hit, quickly picking up the attention of both The Weeknd and Meek Mill. And apparently Meek Mill even tried to sign Pressa for a measly $20,000.
Tried to sign Pressa for like $20,000 and he was going to give him a 10-month leased, like, was it like a Rolls Royce? Yeah, it was a Rolls Royce.
Anywho, as he continues to pick up steam, in February 2017, Drake is seen rapping Pressa's Novocaine on social media whilst he's in the UK. Now, Pressa actually went over to London to network in the music biz, where he ended up linking up with Drake himself, who was out there on a European leg of his tour. Pressa even posted up a picture with Drake, along with a caption saying that he had dropped $50,000 on a lawyer. This chance meeting with Drake eventually turned into a full-blown opportunity for Pressa to open up for Drake on tour, with Pressa opening up for Drake in Birmingham, that being his very first show. But the craziest thing of all was the fact that Pressa was even given permission by the court to join Drake touring all over Europe while he was on bail for these serious kidnapping charges. But they let him go, and this really was a genuine opportunity for Pressa to go and do something productive and stay out of trouble, and I guess the courts could actually see that for once. So Pressa joined Drake on tour along with Smoke Dogg from the opposing hood, leading many to believe that during this time Pressa and Smokey had become friends, with them even collaborating during this period. The thing is, not everyone was thrilled about Pressa joining Drake on tour. I mean, he was still sort of on bail for kidnapping torture. Many articles were ran around this time asking what Drake was doing to bring a serious accused criminal on his tour.
Rapper tours with Drake on European tour while on bail for serious charges.
And apparently the Toronto police were never even informed of Pressa's relaxed bail conditions, and the local cops were positively punching the air seeing Pressa running all over Europe having a good time, with the cops allegedly even contacting venues in attempts to get Pressa's shows shut down from another continent. And we even got to witness Pressa finding out about his shows being cancelled firsthand in Noisy's excellent 6 Rising documentary about the Toronto drill scene.
Kidnapping and torture is just too far. Sorry for the late notice. The venue only raised the issue now. Sorry again.
Now, this was a dope documentary that covered a lot of aspects of Pressa's exciting come-up, and I think it's really important to just point out how focused he was at this time. He clearly wants to improve his life through the music and get as far away from the streets as possible.
But really, I'm out here. I'm the next guy to be doing it in the industry, you know? Well, what am I doing being a fucking gang member? What does that bring me? Like, you know what I mean? Running around Driftwood Court. Like, what am I doing there, you know? Like, I have better things and better plans for my future, like.
And throughout 2017, whilst on bail, Pressa truly did stay focused, using his time in the UK wisely to collab with Peckham rap legend Giggs on the track Sexy, with that coming out only a month after Giggs had appeared twice on Drake's More Life album, so you know Giggs is tapped in with these Toronto mans heavy. And Pressa went on to drop a whole second mixtape by the end of that year called Pressa Brick. That project featuring arguably the biggest hit of his career so far, Canada Goose, along with fellow Toronto shooter Tory Lanez. Canada Goose sits today at a whopping 23 million views. But the biggest W of all would come for Pressa at the end of 2017, when he was eventually cleared of all charges in that kidnapping case. This came after it was declared at a preliminary hearing that there wasn't enough evidence to identify Pressa as the alleged gunman who struck the victim in the head, with it being said that the victim had tried to identify Pressa using a YouTube video of him rapping, with all of that apparently just not being enough to wrap Pressa up in the case. Now, those other 2 guys that were picked up initially with Pressa were eventually convicted of the crime. Lincoln Richards was brought back to Toronto from Montreal to face charges. Interestingly, he was also a rapper that went by the name Ransky Gleachy. He got convicted and sentenced to 6 years, while the alleged ringleader, Ty Shay Pistol Gordon, ended up getting 9 years. So by the time the charges were dropped and the true ringleaders of the crime were sentenced, Pressa had made good on his promise to get out the streets, going legit as a rapper in the music industry. Pressa would eventually leave Toronto, moving to Los Angeles, going full Hollywood, even winding up in a romance with fellow squeaky-voiced rapper Coi Leray. But the thing is though, even after leaving the city, Pressa would continue to maintain his ties to the streets, but in his music, using his hit songs as opportunities to disrespect his ops, whether fallen or still standing. And even though Pressa turned his life around whilst on bail, not long after he caught that kidnapping case, a well-known rival from Rexdale would be murdered, becoming a name that Pressa would mention and disrespect in his songs frequently to this very day. I'm talking about Sizzlack, aka the realist in the Six.